Hello, and thank you for lending your ears to Ratehub.ca's Real Money Talk podcast. In this show, we give you the real talk on all things money. We eliminate the fine print, we junk the jargon, and we explain how you can make smarter financial decisions. We're not millionaires, we're thousandaires, and we know you are too, so this show is for you. We want to talk about money because it affects everyone, rich and poor. Money shouldn't only be the occupation of the 1%, but rather the 99%. Money isn't everything, but it is everywhere. We want to educate about money through story. We Canadians ignore money, hoping if we do, like many other problems, it'll go away. Our goal is to make money an everyday discussion. This podcast is brought to you by EQ Bank and the EQ Bank Savings Plus account. Want the flexibility of an everyday checking account with a 2% interest rate? You got it. You'll also get free Interac e-transfers, free bill payments, no minimum balance, and no monthly fees. For easy banking that earns without any everyday banking fees, switch to EQ Bank today. Hey, thank you for tuning in. My name is Tyler, and I'll be your guide for Season 2 of the show. If you want to get in touch, find Ratehub on your favorite social media channels or email us, realmoneytalk@ratehub.ca. If you like the show, do me a favor, share it with your friends, give us a follow, leave a comment, and follow us on the journey to choosing better. On the last Friday of any month, if you go to the Wellesley Social Services office in Toronto, it's packed full of people on the fringe. For all those people without bank accounts and direct deposit, it's check day. It's when people on Ontario Disability Support Program or Ontario Works receive their funding in the old school way. These people can't work due to health complications or they struggle to find work. Inside the building, it's noisy and riddled with anxiety. There are 4 police on standby, ready to jump in and break up a fight. A worker there says the noise of the masses, most of them homeless, permeates up to their second-floor office above. In those offices are social and family support workers, parks and rec staff, psychiatrists, and public health nurses ready to speak with and help those waiting anxiously in line. They meet in tiny booths with a single computer, a desk, and 2 chairs. There's an alarm button under the desk should the police need to step in. To receive any ODSP checks, you have to apply and have a doctor approve it. The application is long, arduous, and many fail approval. To get on OW, you have to be poor, truly poor. Having a card puts you on the fast track to denial. If they find out you're getting paid under the table, you have to pay the money they gave you back. Every 3 to 6 months, they ask what you're doing to get a job, and you'd better have an answer. If you miss an appointment, they can put your precious check on hold and likely say goodbye to check day. This is the reality for a few of the 380,000 Ontarians on ODSP and 450,000 more on OW. How do you get paid? Direct deposit, right? Far removed from the interrogation and the hassle. We often ignore the people on the street, whether you try to or not. We're blind to the much larger population of people in transition. But you and I, we may not be that far away. UK's The Guardian says 1 in 3 families are a month's pay from losing their homes. Millions of Americans are 1 missed paycheck away from poverty, according to CBS News. It hits close enough to home. It's called liquid asset poor, not being able to withstand a brief financial hiccup like job loss, contraction of a major illness, or a mortgage rate hike. Today's podcast releases in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. The world economy is in turmoil. Without a job, an apartment to live in, or family support, the need to find food and shelter becomes paramount. Enter Chalmers, an app for the homeless developed by Ample Labs. An app to help the people on the street find essential services like food, shelter, and even help them in crisis. Today on the show, Sandra Martin, editor-in-chief at MoneySense, and I interview the founder of Ample Labs, CG Chen. We ask how a homeless person makes use of an app. Should we try to make change with them or give it to a charity? Oh, and there's a few reality checks along the way. This is Real Money Talk. Welcome, CG, to the show. I'm here with Sandra, editor-in-chief of MoneySense.
Hello.
And CG from Ample Labs. And we always kick things off with a money mistake that we made this week or recently, or even a money makeup. So if you saved money in a good way at some point this week, please do tell. I'll kick it off just to give you an idea. I went out for dinner with my kids, and the place that we went to was Lebanon Express, and I shared a salad plate with my wife, and then I made my kids share like a chicken shawarma plate, and it came to $20. And I've never been out to dinner with them for less than sort of like the last time we went out to dinner, which was the week prior, was $75. And I was like, oh my God, what happened here? So anyway,
I miss those days. My kids eat way too much for me to ask them to share a meal now that they're teenagers.
Yeah.
That's a great win. I have one that's like a win, and it's a cautionary tale. So I decided to sell my house last year, and there was nothing I wanted to buy into, so I have socked away, you know, my equity in different things, and didn't have enough room in registered accounts. So I topped up my RSP. That was awesome. Got a great tax refund for that, but I just got my statement of investment income. So the upside, yay! Downside, ooh, taxes. So my lesson from that for people, I mean, I maxed out my TFSA and my RRSP, but if you haven't done that, don't go putting money into stuff because you're gonna have to pay taxes on it.
Yeah, for me, actually, it was just last night. I was out with friends for dinner, and we were talking about Netflix, and one of my friends was like, oh yeah, I'm on the highest tier, but I split it with 4 people, so I pay like $40 a year. And I'm like, that's genius, right? I've been
so
paying
smart. Yeah,
right?
I mean, unless you've got a family with like older kids, you don't need 3 screens, right? So you upgrade to the 4.
Yeah,
I think it's 3, right? The basic account is 3, or is it 2?
Basic is actually you can have 3, but it's one at a time,
right?
And it's like $9.99 versus $40 a year. We did the math. That's like 3 something a month. So yeah, that's fine.
My brother-in-law gives me better be listening, but my brother-in-law gives me Crave. I give him Netflix.
Nice.
You're just sharing logins. I think that's legit.
Yeah. Good exchange.
Yeah,
that's smart.
I think the Crave is the better get given the lineup currently, but that's personal taste.
It's debate. Yeah, it's up for debate for sure.
Netflix has a lot of competition.
Yeah. Tell us about what Ample Labs is doing.
Yeah, sure. So Ample Labs, so we're a tech nonprofit. We're using technology to empower people who are at risk or experiencing homelessness. Our flagship product is called Chalmers. So it's a web-based chatbot that helps you find critical services around the city in about 15 seconds. So imagine you're someone who recently, say, lost your place and you don't know where to go. You can find a lot of services on Chalmers, like an overnight bed, a free meal, a drop-in, things like that. And our goal is we know that it takes somebody anywhere between 20 minutes and 48 hours usually to find a critical service. We want to make it, in 15 seconds. So benchmarking ourselves like 60 times faster than going to Google.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Of course, the number one question that will come up right away is homeless people having smartphones.
Right.
And your answer to that?
Yeah, that's the first question we get asked by everybody. Our answer is 94% of people experiencing homelessness have phones, and 77% actually have a smartphone.
And where do they get them from?
Where do they get them from? Well, I mean, I think, so out of the people that so homelessness is very complex because I think when we think about it, the first thing we think about are folks on the street, right? People that we see sleeping outside, folks panhandling, and that's actually 10% of the population of people who do experience homelessness. Wow. They're kind of who we call the chronically homeless. So they've been in that state for a very, very long time. And so, the services and the care that they may need to get out of that state is going to be tremendous. Now, why is it 94%? Well, 80% of people experiencing homelessness are hidden, as in we don't really see them. So they may be someone who's couch surfing, who's sleeping in their car. And so for someone like that, they may have a full-time job. They may be working. So chances are they can afford some type of phone.
Yeah, there's a quote that's going around the internet right now, which is, most people are 3 bad months away from homelessness.
Yeah.
And if you want to put that into perspective, how easy it is to go from the life that you know now to being one of the hidden homeless.
Absolutely.
Look at it the other way. Yeah. Most of us are not 3 great months away from becoming a millionaire. So it's something that can happen literally to anyone.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And that's what we learn is that, nobody decides to become homeless, right? It's usually through incidences like domestic violence, coming out to family, getting kicked out, aging out of the foster care system. But in Toronto, what's really interesting is right now 4 out of 10 shelter residents are refugees. So we're seeing an interesting trend here in the city.
And then if there are language barriers, how do you, I mean, that's something that I'm sure you've thought about in developing Chalmers. What are some of the things that you do to try to overcome that and get services to people whose first language is not English?
So that's a really, really good question. And that's kind of, when we thought about what we could build to sort of tackle this problem, that's sort of why we thought about a conversational interface that is anonymous, because with Chalmers, we've been working on translation. So we've tested it in different languages like Arabic, Chinese, and things like that. So yeah, that's a great point. I think oftentimes, especially for newcomers, because they don't know anybody locally, it's more likely that they'll turn to a Google or, turn to online to find services. So yeah, something we're actively thinking about
moving towards,
yes.
On an earlier episode of the Real Money podcast, we talked to a new Canadian mom who had young boys. And she said that she actually was able to, a couple of ways that she got in touch with services that helped her as a single mom, really looking to make her limited money go further was going online to see what services were available. So knowing that there were subsidized recreational spots for her boys. And then also, I guess, reaching out to the city of Toronto's programs, like having somebody who will meet with her and coach her.
Yes.
So this is kind of like the first step for people who don't have access yet to somebody who can coach you personally, one-on-one, human to human.
Yes.
It's a conversation you have.
That's right. It's a conversation. What we found is that majority of people do first turn to Google when they're in this situation. The problem with Google and search is that you're not always going to get the most relevant services, and it becomes a sort of a nightmare because you're scrolling through websites, you're going on pages to find something very specific.
So how did you come up with this idea?
Yes. So my friend became homeless. So this is the crazy story, and this took me by surprise because this was around the time that I was thinking, what could I do? I want to do something in my part time to create an impact. And he had 2 great jobs, actually Fortune 500 company jobs. He was laid off for the second time in a row very quickly from his previous one. And so what had happened was he didn't have savings because he was supporting his single mother and 2 sisters, and then eventually couldn't find another job quick enough, couldn't afford to pay rent, got served an eviction letter, called me and asked if he could crash at my place, couch serve. Said, yeah, of course, but let's deal with sort of this housing situation. And so he had never dealt with an eviction. I had never dealt with it. So I went to Google. It took me about 4 to 6 hours to figure out, okay, I think this is your next steps. These are services that you could go to. And that it was during that 4 to 6 hours of Googling and scrolling, I'm just like, this is terrible. Like, if it was him in this situation, how difficult must this be? So can we create something to solve that problem?
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And I have to ask, what's your friend doing now?
Yeah. So good question. So he was able to get into housing. He was able to find another job. But then, he's currently at a boot camp, so he's doing well. Okay. But he's still sort of on that path of finding a full-time sustainable job. Wow. And so it's difficult. It's tricky.
And his family is okay?
His family is okay. So he ended up moving back in with his family. So he has family here, family in the Philippines, and then so when you say it's like, he has a roof over his head and stuff, but he's still on the path to joining the workforce.
Getting laid off from work is like another form of PTSD practically.
And then
am I good enough for anything?
Right. And every interview you go to, you have to sell yourself, and it becomes you
become desperate if you don't have anything.
And if he didn't have family here, no, he could be couch surfing for a while, but then even after that, right, you have to choose.
Well, the other thing is once you've lost your rental accommodations, maybe you're paying an affordable rent, but trying to get back in at a higher level, that makes it even more difficult.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's crazy. I read that Toronto's rents are now less affordable than San Francisco's. Like, that's incredible. I mean, we were talking earlier about Silicon Valley, and there are jokes about how expensive the rent is on that series. But I mean, the fact that a 1-bedroom in Toronto, like, easy to pay $2,000 plus.
$2,000 plus, yeah. Yeah, and I think I read another article about how, like, I think you have to be making $75K or more in Toronto now to have like a decent place, to just have a decent lifestyle. Yeah, it's funny in Silicon Valley, like, even if you get paid over $100K, 150, you're still considered below the poverty line.
Well, and there are apartments that don't even have kitchens. Like, not even that they have a kitchenette. They're like, they're just like, well, you're not going to be eating here anyway. This is,
you don't need it.
It's slightly cheaper, but still not cheap, even though there's no kitchen. There's no way to prepare a meal for yourself. It's like living in a hotel.
I think what's so interesting about building technology and having been in the tech sector is that it's very contentious, because I do know that, you know, like, CEOs, founders of tech companies know that, you know, that gentrification, a lot of it is because of the tech sector, right? It's because of how fast it's growing, and it brings jobs, and it, you know, takes over certain, and so it's very in that, you know, when we talk to tech companies like, hey, Twitter, hey, Google, you know, fund us to solve this problem that you've contributed to, right? Yeah. And there is still resistance. There is still apathy, right? So I think that's the more interesting part, is how can we as Ample Labs make people in tech feel like they can contribute to the solution and they can help, versus sometimes feeling just helpless, or knowing that, hey, my high paying job is making someone else's life difficult.
So how do you get the word out for
Chalmers?
Yeah,
that's a great question. You know, last year we tried a bunch of things like PR, word of mouth. We actually spent a lot of time building our relationship with the community, with the local community. And we found that, you know, in social services, it is a very tight knit community. So once some of the bigger charities know, word gets out, you know, really easily. On our online channels, we can see that referrals come in third. So once we get the word out to, say, a Fred Victor, they get it on their mailing list, all of their staff knows, and then it gets communicated to clients. The number one way people find out through Chalmers is actually word of mouth, which is really interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. Yeah. And you met, on the PR side, you met with the mayor of Toronto?
Yeah, we met him at like a tech event, actually, and we were telling him the work that we were doing, and he gave us a shout out. And then and then we actually recently met with the mayor of Hamilton. Fred, and he loved the work that we're doing, because we're thinking about launching in Hamilton, so he's very supportive.
And is there competition in this space? I'm assuming you guys aren't making any money. It's a not-for-profit. Anybody else that's entering the space is just a good thing for all of you and for all of us.
Yeah, competition is really interesting. So there's LinkVan that you've mentioned, and so they were the inception of the project I actually had learned about through research. So they started in San Francisco. It was a collaboration between Zendesk, so a software company, and a local charity.
Right.
And then they built basically LinkSF that was open source. And then so different cities actually picked it up and adopted it. And that's how LinkVan was formed. In terms of competition in Canada, there's another app called Helpseeker.
Okay.
And so it's co-founded by Alina and Travis. We actually talk to them a fair bit. So what's interesting about the space is that I think people think of each other less as competitors, more so as collaborators. Excellent. Because we're all moving towards the same goal. So to your point, if there are more people doing this, then maybe collectively, you know, we can seek funding from the government, or we can figure out ways to work together. So I think that's what's interesting about the not-for-profit space. In the startup space, it is very competitive. If I'm Uber and you're Lyft, you know, we're trying to get market share. But in this space, I think people think a lot more collaboratively.
So Chalmers is not just in Toronto, you're also in Barrie, is that right?
Yes.
So how did that happen?
Yeah, great question. So we did a lot of PR with Chalmers in Toronto, and actually the mayor's office in Barrie reached out and said, hey, we're seeing a lot of problems here with homelessness and opioid overdoses, and even, the community and the businesses not getting along. And we think, you know, maybe Chalmers could be a solution. Let's do a pilot and find out. And so we did a pilot end of of September last year that ended actually just recently. So it was 4 months. And yeah, we saw a lot of really interesting things and impact. So first, it was obviously the social services community that started to adopt it. So shelters and things like that. But then what we learned was that police officers started to benefit from Chalmers. And then it got rolled out to firefighters, ambulances, and first responders, because these are individuals that on a day-to-day basis actually come into contact with people.
And they can tell them to download it. Yeah.
Yes.
Or would they do the search on behalf of somebody who's new to it?
That's exactly it. They would do the search on behalf and make a referral. Because, without Chalmers, a police officer says, hey, I'm not really sure how I can help or what you're looking for, may go to Google. Now with Chalmers, they can easily make a search.
Wow. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
So I tried Chalmers, just the desktop version.
Yeah.
Just to see it, to try it out. And it's incredibly fast. So it said, what are you looking for?
Yeah.
It comes up with shelter and food and other options. I can't recall all of them right now.
It's okay.
And then, so I said, okay, I'm looking for shelter. And it's like, is it okay if we know your location? Which is awesome. It's, grants the permission. And so it makes me feel secure and safe that way. And then it checks my location. It says, okay, well, your closest location is this. And then it also gave me details about, be forewarned, this particular place is targeted for youth under 25, and it gave me different details like that. Now, do you work with those services? A colleague walked past me and said, well, how do you know that there are beds there? Are those community services saying, are they working with you to say, hey, we're full? Or does that person have to go there to find out that there are no beds for them?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. So in terms of how we get the services on there, we actually do it by, again, collaboration. So we partner with 211 Ontario. Okay. So they're a local charity, and they have about 200,000 services, 200,000 services in their database of social services in the entire province. Wow. So we kind of do an integration. So we call their API, we load it up, and their primary goal is to ensure that this information is up to date. Now, your second question with beds is really interesting, because when we were building out the shelter flow, we said, if we can get occupancy from the city, let's do it so people can see which places are open and they can book and almost, have that Uber-like experience. However, the city is actually really resistant to sharing that information.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they keep all of that internally. So they want to control it just because of, liability and other things, because this information, even internally, is really hard to be updated in real time, because people can call and book a bed and there'll be a 2-hour limit. A lot of times people don't show up. So the whole booking system, because, people can make reservations and not show up.
There's still the
tricky.
Human factor. So it's a bit like Open Table,
yes.
which I assumed until I had an experience booking a restaurant. Very different from the service you provide, but from a technology perspective, not that different. I just assumed it was all real time, but there's a human factor in that the restaurant owner or whoever's managing the reservations actually has to check the Open Table file and then say, okay, I'm aligning it with whatever system we have internally. So there's that human factor.
Yes.
So that would be disappointing for somebody to arrive and then find that they didn't have a bed. But I guess with Chalmers, they could also see if there was another alternative, which is not something that they could do previously.
Yes. And so when Chalmers makes a recommendation, what we try to do is give the best recommendation. So that's why we ask for your location. We're always looking for something in real time. So taking your location, what is the closest thing that is happening right now, right? And again, that's something that you can't do through Google. You Google, get a bunch of results. You have to sort that yourself.
Right. Yeah. So in terms of the future of the technology, something that I'm curious about as somebody who I've got kids, and one of the things we do as a family is we look to either make a strategic donation, or we're often looking for volunteer opportunities. And we hear this from charities time and again. There's a big rush at specific times of the year. So food banks around Thanksgiving or Christmas, for example. Wouldn't it be great if there was an equivalent that would help you find places that just needed another set of hands, where you could say, I'm a family, I have an under 12-year-old. Like, those are some of the things that I hear from parents, that I'd love to do something charitable with my kids, but the food bank requires participants to be 12 or up.
Right.
So I don't know. Would it translate to something like that?
Yeah. I mean, I think with the technology, we can definitely scale it and sort of create another use case. So yeah, in that scenario, definitely. So, on Chalmers, you can indicate who you are, what kind of opportunities you're looking for, and Chalmers could potentially serve up places that are actually seeking volunteers. So you can take the same chatbot platform and plug in a different use case, and it would work.
Yeah, and really neat that it would be within a specific geographic distance from you, so that I just, I'm always thinking of ways to make that more accessible for people. Where you hear that, like we talk about it around the office, that people want to do more good, but they don't really know what they can do without becoming a member of something formal.
Yes.
So that would be really interesting.
Yeah.
So what are next steps for you? Is it continuing to meet with representatives from other communities and just making Chalmers available in a larger geographic location? Yeah,
I think so. I think last year what we really wanted to sort of measure is sort of the potential impact Chalmers would have in a city or a community. Who would use it, who would get the most benefit, who are the returning users. So we do have 20% retention on Chalmers. We know that 20% of people are coming back and using it over and over again. And in the case of if it's a social worker, then that's great, because they may be using it, to help clients during the day. But if it's an individual who's experiencing homelessness, we eventually want them to graduate, right? Like a dating app, the success metric is to get off of it. So there's also that contingent. So what we want to do this year is, okay, we've seen the impact of what it can do in communities. Now, how can we scale this impact so we can get this to as many communities as we can? And so even the way we've built the software, the idea is that we've made it very modular, so that our back end, we can partner with other data partners in other communities to get this live. And so this was actually inspired by Link SF, because when we had learned about how many other cities ended up picking up Link SF because it was open source,
you're right.
Yeah. So
what's the end goal for Chalmers and for you?
Yeah, the end goal, I think what success would look like to me is Chalmers is live in every major city or small city in North America, and potentially, international around the world, and people are actively using it. It becomes sort of the main, how would you say, almost like the main go-to, right? We could see Chalmers, Barry's interested in putting Chalmers on iPads at certain bus stops where they know there's a lot of high traffic.
That's interesting.
So success, I think, would look like, Chalmers is available everywhere. It's on every library computer. When you're in the malls, it's on every kiosk. Everybody knows that it's a phone app that they can go and download eventually in the App Store. And people are able to find things very, very quickly.
If it's okay, to switch gears just a little bit and ask some of those myth busting questions. Yeah. The first question that's come up is that both Sandra and I have had colleagues that ask about, and especially where we're located, where there's a significant homeless population right here, and you get asked for spare change.
Yes.
There's been a couple of people that have said, it'd be really cool if they had sort of like a tap to pay on their smartphone. Is that something that Chalmers would do? Is there something that exists already? And then to add to that question is, should we be giving money to the homeless, or is it better spent by giving it to United Way or something,
or someone like Fred Victor or an organization like yours, so that you can improve your services? What is the best way to make an impact?
Yeah, that is that's a really hard question. And my answer comes from the community. So we, prior to actually building any software, we did spend a lot of time talking to people in the community, and I would say interacting with folks who are more transitionally or chronically homeless. And so we would ask, if I wanted to help you, what is the best way? And, what about change? And so actually people from the community had said, if you are going to give someone change, give $1, give $2. It's not a lot of money. It's not something, it's not, potentially big enough that it could be harmful down the line. I think that's what a lot of people are thinking. But, they said the most important thing is to actually have the conversation, to look the person in the eye, and to sort of acknowledge that they exist. Right. And so sometimes giving change could be a conversation starter, or maybe it doesn't have to be change. Maybe it's, hey, I can't give you change, but can I buy you a meal? Have you had a meal or something like that? And I've personally done that a lot, and I got to learn a lot of stories about how someone ended up where they were. And I think at the end of the day, the most impact, if you're not looking to, aside from donating to a charity or things like that, is to just have that conversation, because the conversation maybe to that individual is, one of the only ones that they have. Right. And so it gets even from a psychology standpoint, like our researchers are looking at what are the effects of ostracism on an individual. And when someone is isolated and alone for so long, you know, they start to ask themselves, well, if people ignore me and people don't acknowledge me, am I a real person? Am I, you know? And so, yeah, I think that conversation sometimes is probably more powerful than, you know, a couple dollars.
So what's a tip for someone who hasn't become accustomed to having those conversations?
Yeah.
Like even having a conversation with any stranger on their commute and might feel awkward about it.
Yeah.
What are some tips that you can offer to help really just kind of break them into it? Like, I think once you've done it, it's easier, but how do you start?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. We've done it a lot with our volunteers. I think it's something as simple as, you know, hi, how are you? How are you doing today? You know, is there something that I can get you? You know, I think oftentimes we see people at intersections. Have you had a meal today? Can I get you a meal? Is there something that could be helpful? Or kind of the asking, how's your day going? And oftentimes what I find is that you don't have to ask a lot of questions for people to open up. But I think it's also your approach. I think it is important to, you know, come off with a smile, come off a little bit warm. And, you know, there are times where people won't want to talk to you. And I think they'll also make that obvious right away.
Right. So don't push it if somebody clearly is not in the mood to communicate that day.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I find it cool taking public transit. I think our TTC gets a lot of lack of love, to say it politely.
Yeah.
But I take the 501 streetcar, as Tyler said. We're in a really a community, like a neighborhood in transition, right? We see gentrification. There's yet another condo going up, but we also have a very large homeless population.
Yes.
And it always makes me feel better about being a Torontonian when I see a great interaction like that. So I was actually on the streetcar, and a really well-dressed businesswoman was having, you know, really trying to calm down an older gentleman who I think had gotten confused about where he was going. And she said, no, it's okay. Where do you need to go? It's okay. I'm going to get off the streetcar with you. And you only have to take one more streetcar. I'll put you on it. It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And that just made me feel great about being a city dweller.
Yeah.
Also, to your point, the power of just reaching out to somebody.
Yeah. Yeah, being generous and just acknowledging that they are a person. And I think that's sort of the biggest thing. I think, you know, speaking to a lot of people that have been working in this space for a long time, one lady said, you know, really, at the end of the day, homelessness is because of segregation. It's because we think people who are homeless are different than we are. And so we put this line and it's us versus them, or, you know, and so kind of removing that line and saying, you're just a person, you know, hi, what's your name? Yeah. Can I help? Yeah. Puts the humanity back.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah.
I think that there's so many people that just sort of walk away and think, you know, you're just looking for your next hit or something like that, or you're crazy, or I mean, to your point earlier in the podcast, it can happen to any of us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what's interesting with every single volunteer we've had on the team, something we try to do when we onboard folks is to attend a drop-in or to have actually a meal at a community center, and for volunteers to talk to people. And I think the thing that I hear the most is after I've had a conversation with someone, I realize they're just like me.
Right.
They're a person, and that myth or that, you know, completely goes away.
That's excellent. That's excellent. How does someone that listening to this podcast help Chalmers?
Yeah, great question. So you can go to our website, so amplelabs.co. You can donate to our organization through our crowdfunding campaign. And we have a lot of volunteer opportunities. So we, because we're building software, a lot of the roles are technical, but we also take in any general volunteers. So when we do things like, you know, activations and events in the city and things like that, you can get involved. So I would say that's where people can start. Yeah.
Okay. Rapid fire questions.
Okay.
What's in your wallet?
Debit card, credit card, couple IDs. That's it. No cash.
What book should everyone read?
I really like Grit. It's about what makes certain people grittier than others.
A favorite app on your phone?
It's between Slack, Instagram, and Flipboard.
Flipboard. What's Flipboard?
For news.
It's the news one? Okay, I was wondering. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
If you could put anything on a billboard to make one big statement to the world, like let's say it's on the side of the Gardner Expressway, what does it say?
Right. It would probably be like a Chalmers ad. That's a really great question. I'm going to have to think about that, but I would say something myth busting. Yeah, I'm going to have to think about that.
And where will you be in 5 years?
Great question. I think in 5 years, I would love to see Ample really take off. I mean, if we can have, Chalmers in as many cities as we can, even Ample in different communities, I think I may, if it's really, really successful and I continue to love what I do, I'll be here or maybe I'll be on a new venture. I think it depends. Yeah.
You love what you do though.
I do.
Yeah.
I do. Yeah.
Is this all you do now?
Yes, this is my full-time job.
Good for you. And what's it like being a founder?
Oh man, it's like a roller coaster. Yeah, I think it's true. I think one day you're feeling great because, something happened. You have these things are moving forward. The next day there's fires. You don't know what you're doing. And when I talk to other founders, I find that it's similar. It's, you're just never sure of what's next. So I think it's both. I think that's why people are crazy enough to be founders, and that's what makes it fun. But I think also at the same time, there really is a lot of pressure, a lot of uncertainty. And so, yeah, I think you do have to have a lot of grit, to continue.
Nice. I think that's it for me.
That's it for me too. Wow.
Awesome.
You're
Cool.
such a pro. It's like a pleasure.
Oh,
I find
guys.
every interview a pleasure, but it's just like, wow, that wasn't even work.
Yeah.
Also, Tyler makes it easy too.
Yeah. You guys made it easy. You guys are so
Hi, my name is Amanda from Project Decimal, a financial literacy initiative from Ratehub.ca. Here's your financial tip for the week. Credit scores are like the adult version of a report card. They range from 300 to 900. A good credit score is above 660 and an excellent score is above 760. The top 3 things that affect your credit score in order of importance are: number 1, your payment history. So how responsible you've been with making payments. The best thing you can do is make your payments in full and on time. Number 2, how much debt you have compared to your credit limit across all credit cards and lines of credit. This ratio is called the credit utilization ratio. So in other words, how much debt you have relative to the total of your revolving credit limit. Revolving credit limit meaning any credit that replenishes after you pay it back. So just to clarify, mortgages, student loans, car loans are not revolving credit. You pay those loans down and then they're over. You want to keep your credit utilization ratio at least under 30%, preferably under 20%. This is the second biggest factor for your credit score. A lot of people don't know about it. It's like a silent killer. It lowers your credit score slowly over time if you don't keep your credit utilization ratio low enough. Number 3, your credit history length. The longer you've held a certain account, the better, especially if you've been responsible with it. When you close an account, it gets erased from your credit history 7 years after the closing date. Commonly with first credit cards, you were young, you didn't know how to choose a good credit card, or you didn't have access to the best cards because of limited income. Then you get older and things change, so you open a card that better serves you. When this happens, a lot of people tend to close their first card when they get their new and improved second card. But here's the thing. 7 years after closing, the history of your first credit card gets erased. Losing the credit history might not be to your benefit though, especially if you opened your second card many years later. Imagine this. You want a new credit card, you've had your first card for 10 years, and it doesn't do much for you anymore. You open a new card and on the same day close the first card. 7 years later, your first card's history gets erased. Instead of your credit history being 17 years long, it drops to being 7 years. That drop in history length could affect your credit score. But it might be beneficial to close your first card if that card has bad credit history. Your history length will become shorter, but it will also erase that bad history with it. Credit scores are one of the most mysterious parts of personal finance, but they're also one of the most important. So make sure you check your credit score regularly and monitor it closely. And remember, it won't hurt your credit score if you're the one who's checking it. To learn more, visit Ratehub.ca/decimal.
Thank you for listening. Thank you to Beat Chemist for providing us with our music. Find him on SoundCloud. I want to sincerely thank you for taking the time out of your own day and investing it in yourself to get smarter about money. Head over to Ratehub.ca to learn more about making smarter financial decisions. If you want to thank us, please leave a review on Apple Podcast and follow us on Spotify. Thank you for listening. Let's help Canadians choose better with their finances. This podcast is brought to you by EQ Bank and the EQ Bank Savings Plus account. Want the flexibility of an everyday checking account with a 2% interest rate? You got it. You'll also get free Interac e-transfers, free bill payments, no minimum balance, and no monthly fees. For easy banking that earns without any everyday banking fees, switch to EQ Bank today.
The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. The views and opinions expressed by Ratehub employees are those of the employees and do not necessarily reflect the views of Ratehub Inc. or any of its sponsors or officials. This is for general use. We're not certified or licensed advisors.
Yeah, we just don't want to get sued.